Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. Hi, wouldn't this world be a better place if every single day, every single person said, "Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine."
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go back to that lemon light?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show. By the way, I'd also like you to introduce you to Anita Alvarez, one of my most favorite people in the whole wide world, because me and her are scissor happy, scissor friends, scissor pals.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Find us at the web at ntnm.org. Over 1,000 videos. Over 1/3 shows watched. Thank you very much. Community Policing Caps24.org. Jewish Chicago will be coming out for your early voting pleasure because of all the Jewish holidays. I'm setting early deadlines if you want to participate. So basically, if you want in, you got to let me know by October 13th. October 14th, I need everything in-house. Then I'll spend the next few days splitting between the Jewish holidays and utter madness finishing, sending it to the printer. It'll be on the web the Thursday before early voting, and it'll be out on the street in newspaper form early the next week. Okay, before I introduce my next guest, I got something you don't have, and it's really cool, okay? I have the official Anita Alvarez collection, okay? What does this collection consist of? And it's not a collection you have either. It's a 3-piece collection. And piece number 1, very important, is my Anita Alvarez coffee mug. Okay, very cool coffee mug. People have noted it. I usually use it on the show, either that or my Weber Press one, because I like the guys at Weber Press. Okay, number 2, and it's about the only pen I've ever bought a refill for ever because it's so cool, my official Anita Alvarez pen. Okay, something else very few people have, but other people do. But what makes my 3-piece part section unique? I am the only person, especially at this point in time, at least for this short period, that can claim I have the 3rd piece of the collection here, and that is the real live state's attorney herself, Anita Alvarez.
Thanks, Avi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you look resplendent today in red. I've got to tell you that.
Thanks. I could get you more pens, too, if you want.
I have no objection. Any excuse. Listen, I want everybody to know that, and I'm not just saying this because you can still indict me for first-degree murder, but you know what? Whatever you decide to do afterwards, take your time, whatever else. If you want to come on and comment on the judicial scene or the crime scene or crime situation, you're more than welcome to. Sally Daly, same invitation goes out to you, but in your area of expertise, please.
Well, I'm going to take you up on that, and I'll be back.
Definitely take me up. I definitely want you back. Because the fact of the matter is, you know what? This is a very genuinely good person. And originally, I had no idea who she was, and it just started to become fun interviewing her. And actually, the 2 people I look forward the most to being on the show, and one I'm not getting back probably for a couple of years, is Tracy Butler, and the other one is you, Anita Alvarez.
Oh, well, thank you.
Those are my 2 favorite guests, absolutely.
It's always fun coming over here.
The pleasure is mine, I got to tell you, and increasingly over the years, it becomes more and more fun. But, you know what, one of the reasons I don't really sit back and chuckle so much or get off when I watch our interviews is because then we switch to these serious subjects like crime and murder.
Absolutely.
So, it's kind of hard to get too lost over here.
Right.
As fun as it is, and as much fun as I have. It's funny because I remember you're actually, I don't know if it was you or Sally telling me that, when things are a little down in the office, you'd actually watch the Marty Levinson bits.
Absolutely, because that'll always pick you up. No matter what kind of a day you're having. If you're having a bad day, it's always great.
Yeah.
It was fun to do, and it's like one of my highlights, I think.
Yeah, and by the way, Marty was actually supposed to be here today, but he has a lot of nerve. Just because his daughter's getting married in 2 weeks and they're having the tasting menu today to decide what's going to be served at the wedding, he couldn't make it. Marty, how selfish can you be? Shame on you.
Well, that's a very good excuse.
I
very good.
No,
excuse.
Marty's a great guy. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been dealing with him for all these years. You know what? You wrote a really great op-ed piece in the Tribune, and it's funny because I saw it first on Facebook, and I hit the like, and I only do that after I read the story. Okay, I don't want to be responsible. People look at me and think I'm something I'm not, but I'm not famous, but I am a pseudo public figure in my own mind.
But you are famous. You are famous.
Well, at least with the right people. So in any event, I read it. I really liked it. And then I decided I should read it a second time. I read it for a second time, and bang, after I finished the story, I get an email from Sally Daly Hunt saying, oh, in case you didn't see this. And then I wrote her that, saw it for a second time. By the way, and I also want to take this opportunity, because I know you know him too. I sent her an email also. I want to wish my condolences to Billy O'Brien and his family on the loss of his wife. I'm very close with all the O'Briens. They're really terrific people. I didn't know his wife, but I know him. I've met his kids at times, and it's a really big loss, and you should know no more sorrow, Billy.
Yeah. She was a tremendous person and suffered a lot. So
Oh, that I'm sorry to hear.
it was years and years. So I had just spoken to Bill several weeks ago. So it's very sad.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, let's get back to crime, which is also a sad situation over here. You made some really good points in the story. To let people know, you basically talked about gun offenders not serving full sentences, maybe not even being sentenced enough. But there was a specific case, and I should let you tell it. There was a guy with three, I'm talking about the guy with the 3 gun convictions. You want me to say it, or then we'll
Go
get
ahead.
into Okay. He was sentenced to a total of 26 and a half years in jail. He only served 11. He got hauled back in each time with loaded guns on parole, committed other crimes, wound up killing somebody. Okay, a totally unnecessary death. In terms of it, people get caught up in popularity. I know a guy. He's a nice guy, but he's not all there. He actually moved to Montana for Y2K because he figured the world was going to explode. And he wouldn't watch TV because it said it was going to make him stupid. And I actually kind of admired that until he told me that the aliens send signals. And, he's one of these guys that wears the tin cap under the hat and all that. So that didn't overly impress me. The fact is, TV can make you very stupid. Because when you're watching the news, you're more likely to be watching entertainment than actual news. It's a shame. But do you think all these gorgeous women and men that are on these news shows are the most qualified reporters? There are a bunch of actors reading stories, and who says the reporters going out and getting them are that good in the first place? And they're so young, they don't have any perspective, and they'll go with a popular tide, and they're easily fooled. And this putting it mildly. And, right now there's a popular tide to there's too many people in jail for all these nonviolent offenses. Okay, and you're the expert on the subject, so we'll get there. Let's let more and more people out of jail. Quinn let a whole bunch of people out of jail, and close to half of them wound up coming back.
We talk about the op-ed, and the whole point of that was to remind people, especially from what we've been seeing here in Chicago. I mean, just this past weekend, 13 people were killed. 13 people on the weekend. That's outrageous. And to remind people that I have been pushing for the past almost 5 years to strengthen our gun laws. And it goes back, it kind of touches on what you just said. There's been this narrative out there that Chicago has the toughest gun laws. But we don't. We're talking about the gun laws, the state of Illinois. It's not just, oh, you can't possess a gun in the city of Chicago. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what happens to the person who's convicted of a violent crime with a loaded handgun. What happens to him? And what I've experienced, what I've seen in my 30 years of being, a Cook County prosecutor, is that these people just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Because the reality is, if you're caught with a gun, the Illinois law, the minimum on a UUW, which is unlawful use of a weapon, is 1 year. Well, 1 year in the IDOC is not 1 year. You and I both know that. 1 year is probably 3 or 4 months. Because you only have to serve half of it, and there's no truth in sentencing, and then you get good time for this and that and the other thing, and before you know it, you're out in 3 months. And what happens? What we've seen is that they just come recycling right back in. There was a study done that said 63% of gun offenders re-offend within a year. So I think the question for our legislature, which I've been unsuccessful down there, is let's ask this question: is there really a deterrent for someone who decides to pick up that gun and settle whatever argument or score that he has with a gun, shooting somebody? Right? What's the deterrent? They know that not much is going to happen to them. Yeah. They know they're going to be out in 3 months. They can do 3 months, and unfortunately, with some of the gangs, they look at it, they kind of have it, it's a badge of honor, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I'm going to jail. I can do 6 months. I'd rather do 6 months than, do something else. So we have to make sure that there is really a deterrent so that somebody is going to think twice about grabbing that gun if they say, you know what? I don't want to go to jail for 3 years. I don't want to, stay in custody for 3 years. So maybe they'll think twice. I mean, the whole purpose, and I think, again, you mentioned it, Avi, there's this whole narrative and this whole movement to, empty our jails, okay, empty our jails. Well, I, like everybody else, don't believe that, that nonviolent offenders should be spending time in jail. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm. I'm talking about the violent offenders. What do we do with the violent offenders, right? I've done a great job when it comes to nonviolent. I've created all these programs that never existed before, giving people a second chance. And those are people who, a retail theft, a gun, a drug, a low-level marijuana or possession case. Those things are over here. But the guns and the violence, there really is no strong deterrent here in Illinois. And New York saw a decrease in their violence when, what did they do? They changed their gun laws. And they increased the minimum amount of time on a gun case. It's 3.5 years in New York, as opposed to our 1.
Yeah, when that wide receiver shot himself.
Right. Look what happened with him.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen here in Illinois. That would never happen in Illinois. And it's like you want to say, wake up, because some of the opposition that I've had over the years in Springfield is, oh, you're just trying to put more people in jail. No. I, number one, are trying to keep our streets safe. I don't want to see another 9-year-old shot and killed. I don't want to see, a mother pushing a stroller shot and killed. What I'm trying to do is to save lives. Make sure that the right people, those violent people, who are, out there with weapons, that they are being held accountable for what they do. So they're not back out on the street in 3 months and shooting up a street. And the case that you pointed out, he just kept. Was he deterred from grabbing guns? No.
And the fact is, what? One thing I've understood since I was a little kid, because on the South Side I used to get beaten up. I grew 11 inches in 1 year. I learned. And by the way, one thing I'll say is, for all the parents making sure their kids, don't have a free second to breathe, being able to go outside and getting beaten up is what made me as tough as I am. Well, also my mother naming me Avi and my wearing a yarmulke definitely earned me more than a few fights. But at some point, you better learn how to fight back. But you know what? There are some people who I just believe are never going to be good people. Good. It's not just a matter of education. Some people have made a choice to live the
Right.
life they live. And at a certain point, and actually it's before a person is 18 in my book, it's very doubtful that person will ever live a good life. The person may become sort of con artist, if it keeps them out of jail, down a rope or something. But do you really want these people on the streets? I lived in a gang neighborhood for 6 months on the South Side because my parents didn't want to give up on the neighborhood. And I was partially at fault. I was wrong. Okay, that was the Blackstone Rangers. That was a wonderful experience that at least I lived through. And by the way, 2 blocks from where the Presidential Library is going,
Oh, that's where you grew up?
I was mugged.
Oh, my.
We were on the bridle path on the way to play golf, my brother and I.
Oh.
No, I lived at, matter of fact, one of the recent shootings was 2800 East 77th.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I lived on 77th and Essex, which is 2500 East.
Oh, right there.
And if you were to look up my address, 7736 Essex, in that block, and I'd be curious because you can still do this. There are people, the people my parents sold the house to are doing 200 years in jail. They were pharmacists, but apparently were selling more than just the pharmaceuticals.
Wow.
Okay, as a result, there were running gun battles, and there were people killed in my hallway, people from my address killed, people killed on my lawn, other people. There have been numerous murders on the block, and that is part of the neighborhood known as Murder Town by local residents, not by the press. And you couldn't pay me to drive through there anymore.
Right.
You just couldn't. But the fact is that, look, I spent 1 year in South Shore High School, and I got to see these guys had no interest in school whatsoever. They were there for Blackstone Ranger purposes. I never saw a guy whose report card was all Fs. It just glared at you. I never saw a guy who on the achievement tests would score a 1 or a 2. And they were there. And these kids were not that stupid. They just were living a different lifestyle that they wanted to live. And do you really want these people on the street? Do you really think that you can really educate some of these people and get them going? Do you really want to risk another life? I don't know how you feel about the death. It's funny. I actually, for a while, not very long, but it was an interesting thing. I got fixed up with the dean of the DePaul Law School. And we actually went out for about a little bit. And she was very intelligent. I mean, that's an understatement, but her real job was raising money. And she made the argument to me that she's all for the death penalty if you can be sure you are convicting the right person. And she talked about all the DNA stuff. And, that's something I wouldn't mind talking about even after you're out of office, because I don't necessarily... Just because DNA goes a certain way doesn't necessarily mean the circumstances happen the way you might think the DNA might go.
Right. The DNA it's a tremendous tool. It could be your key piece of evidence. It really can. It could point you to the real killer. Absolutely. But sometimes DNA, it creates more questions than it gives you answers. And, the good thing is, I created a conviction integrity unit because I thought it was so important that we look at these old cases, because questions would arise, or attorneys would approach us, or even the defendant themselves would write a letter and say, look, I have been wrongfully convicted. I didn't do this. Please look at my case. And so when I created the Conviction Integrity Unit, I thought it was so important. I think every prosecutor's office in the nation needs to have one, no matter if you're big or small, because we're all dealing with the same problems, because we didn't have that advancement of science back in 1992. So we have seen over and over again cases where you had evidence that was never worked up for any kind of forensics, right? It wasn't worked up for any DNA. But today we have that ability, and we've been able to go back and work up evidence. And in some of those cases, it actually confirms that this is the right defendant. Those are the cases you'll never hear about on TV. Yeah. But others, of course, have given us the opportunity and to dismiss the case against the wrongfully convicted and charge the right person. So, that's an integral part of any prosecutor's office, because you have to be able to, admit the mistakes of the past,
But by the way,
it's-
not all of those were your mistakes either. A lot of them
Oh,
happened
no.
before you.
I've been looking at cases, from the Jack O'Malley days. These cases are old. They're very old. And some of them, like I said, some of them we've been able to solve, some we have not, and some just confirm that particular defendant's, conviction. So, but it's essential that we do it. It's important because I think the public needs to know that we take this seriously. And I think part of our job as prosecutors is being able to admit the mistakes of the past. But it's certainly...
See, I think that's important in almost anything you do in life.
Absolutely. You have to stand up there and say, I made a mistake, or this was a mistake, or this was wrong, and you have to be able to move on and correct that. And but people, with TV, people think, oh, you can get DNA results in 2 minutes. No, you can't. It takes sometimes 6 months to a year. But those are important things, and it's an integral part of my office.
Yeah, no, it's different day and age too. One of these days, I really should gather a few people and have a really interesting talk off the air, which I've actually done with a few people. It's we won't get into that over here. I don't want to get any, because some of the people are still working, and I don't want to get them into any trouble. Okay, but in terms of, just out of curiosity, okay, the drug laws. I've always been in favor. And by the way, I've had guys like well, I don't want to say a name, but I've had people who have been in your office before who publicly take a stance against, drugs are bad, drugs are evil. And I'm not denying that. But they'll tell me off the air they ought to be legalized. I've had police commanders and police chiefs, deputy chiefs and stuff, tell me they ought to be legalized because it will stop the profit incentive of gangs. You certainly had your experience with gangs in the position you're in right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, would legalizing drugs have any effect on, what effect would they have on the gangs? And, well, you're not a sociologist, I don't know if you know what effect it would have on drug use, but I would tend to think when there's a profit margin, it would drive drug use higher with the profit margin.
I would think in some areas, the gangs, that is how they make their money, is simply drugs. But it's not all drugs. In fact, we have seen the gangs, they're human trafficking. They're selling children, they're selling women. We've seen gangs involved in real estate. They're involved in a lot of different activities, not necessarily selling drugs anymore. And that's what we've seen.
By the way, I think they're giving political contributions too to
I believe they are as well. I believe they are as well. So they have branched out to other things. It's not all drug trade.
Yeah, it's like the mafia. They got smart.
and so it's not just the drug trade. But as far as drugs, what I've done, and because what I think it's important for that person who truly is addicted, and we saw those people coming in and recycling into the system. That's why we created our new drug diversion program, because some people say, well, just stop prosecuting them, just stop it, just legalize it. Well, here's my thought on that is, and what happens to that person who is truly addicted? Are we helping them?
No.
No, we're not. We're not helping them because they're going to die on the street. How about sometimes the only way to get them help is that first, interaction with the system. So what we've been doing, and it took us a while to create that drug diversion program because we wanted something really comprehensive, and we wanted to make sure we had our social service providers, with us. Which we do, which is great because now that person who comes in, we're not just saying, okay, we're going to dismiss your case, go home. No, they're going into a program and getting the help that they need, and that's what I think is important. So, I agree with you that drug laws, we can loosen up on some drug laws, and I had a whole proposal again that fell on deaf ears in Springfield that would have done that. But it allows us, the diversion programs I created allows us to help those people who truly are addicted, who need help.
Now, let me ask you on the other side, because, it's never so simple that I'm just for something, okay? A lot trickier than that, and a lot more complicated, and confuse myself all the time. But, you know what? One of the things they talk about, the arrests, I've talked to some cops when they say, you always see black people are arrested for drugs a disproportionate amount of the time, Hispanics also. When I see drugs peddled on street corners, either in this neighborhood or when I do rent a car and I'm going through the city, it's usually a black face, and if it's not a black face, it's an Hispanic face. And policemen, I don't think as a habit want to deal with all the paperwork that's involved in just somebody who's smoking a joint in an alley. I don't think that really interests them. And by the way, just for the record, and I'll say this on the air, many years ago, though, so we're talking like a different era, I actually once got stopped by the cops, and I had something in the car that was green and crumbly and from Acapulco.
It was oregano from your garden.
Exactly. And basically, the cop goes, he takes it, he smells it, he takes out a bag, he takes 3/4 of it, puts it in the bag, puts it in his pocket, redoes my thing, hides it under the seat like I had it, and said, "You never saw this." And drove off. It's just an interesting story. But you know what? When a cop rousts a gang member, like when we at the CAFS meetings, the cops know, the courts sometimes know, the people on the street know. We know who the bad guys are.
Right.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know, the judicial system in groups like the ACLU have provided so many hurdles. It's ridiculous. It really is. And you can't put the guy in jail. So if a cop happens to stop somebody for a legitimate reason and finds a joint on him, and gang members are more likely to be black, 1, Hispanic, 2, you know, they're going to get arrested for the joint. And I don't think it's so much that, you know, they're doing the drug offense. They just want this guy off the street, at least for a while, and let them know the cops are interested in rousting them. But that would be considered a nonviolent offense. So any thoughts on that, or have you ever heard that before from anybody?
Well, yes, I have heard from police officers saying, well, this guy terrorizes this neighborhood, and we stopped him, and basically we found a joint on him, so we want to put him through the system. Again, well, how we look at it, though, is obviously with the especially with marijuana, now it's just tickets. The city is just issuing tickets. In fact, that's the law in the state now. I have no problem with that, because I honestly think, with the marijuana laws, we've already, obviously so many states have legalized it. It's in a different category. But I think what's important is that the
I agree
officers,
with you on that, by the way.
Yeah, the officers focus on the violence, and you can't blame an officer when he says, "Well, I'd like to get this guy off the street," because he's more apt to shoot somebody. So it's kind of it's a touchy situation, because obviously we want to focus on the violence. We really do.
Right.
But I think it's at this day and age and the climate that we're in, it's very hard for any
climate,
officer to do his job.
The climate is awful, and you know what? I feel so bad for these guys, because they want to do a good job, and gangs are openly flaunting them in so many areas. It's not even funny.
It's the most difficult job to have right now. It really is, to be a police officer, and it's a shame. I mean, and you know this, I know this. There are good and bad in every profession, right?
Sure.
Good doctors, bad doctors, good lawyers, bad lawyers. You name it. So are there bad police officers? Absolutely there are.
Yeah, but the vast majority of
are
them
good, hard-working officers who give their heart and soul each and every day and put their lives on the line.
I mean, like 90-something%, maybe more than
Absolutely.
95. It's not like, the trouble is, with the news, you see one person. There's 13,000 people in the Chicago Police Department. Nobody's going to show me 13,000 of anything,
right,
and tell me that there aren't a couple of hundred really rotten eggs in there.
Right. As I said, in any profession, right? You go to any hospital, you're going to find a good doctor and a bad doctor. But, for the majority of the officers are good, hardworking officers, and it's by far, right now, the hardest job to have.
No question about it. And listen, I want to congratulate you on a great job. You still got a little while to go.
Yeah,
so you still got a chance to indict me for first-degree murder. And I really want you back.
Well, I'm going to come back, all right? You're not getting rid of me.
That's important. I don't want to. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank Sally Daly, and I also want to thank Dan Kirk, who's already went into private industry, because some of the most fun times I've had on the show, if not the most fun times, have been with you guys. And I really want to thank you publicly, and Sally and Dan, for all the great times. And it's been so enjoyable. I really look forward. It'd be a shame, even if you're not state's attorney, we'll find something else you can prosecute me on.
No, I love coming. It's always fun to come and be on this show, and we talk about the important things. and so you're not getting rid of me.
No, that's good, and it's always an honest conversation too. So I want to thank you very much, Anita
Thank you, Avi.
Alvarez. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Sally Daly. I don't know your names.
Ralph.
Hi, Ralph. Thank you so much for bringing everybody here. He's the guy who checks on thermonuclear devices in the house before she's supposed to enter. And thank you, Sonny Hirsch, for joining us. Thank you, all of you. We're going solid election from here on in. This is my last guest who's not running for office this time, although she should be voted in by acclamation. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.